Hello, welcome back to my world of stuff. It's time to pay a visit to the visitors. Hello, welcome. My name is Paul Mount. You're very welcome to my world of stuff. If you are new here, if you've been drawn in by the sight of V in the thumbnail, then why not stick around, like and subscribe to the channel, because there's all sorts of stuff on this channel. I do lots of retro stuff, lots of classic retro TV, lots of genre films, fantasy classics, even occasionally new films, plus a fair bit of Doctor Who. So please like and subscribe to the channel and stick around. And if you're watching this video, my analytics show me that less than 50% of my viewers are subscribers to the channel. I think it's 49, 51, something like that, which isn't bad by YouTube standards. But if you're a subscriber, stick around and keep looking at the videos. And if you're watching the video, you've not subscribed, just press the subscribe button. You don't have to watch all the videos, but it does wonders for the channel's analytics. So I'm told, so it'd be great to have you on board. Thank you very much. V, the mini-series. Some of you who saw my physical media update yesterday will have seen me proudly displaying the DVD copy of V, which I picked up last week from eBay. And some of you will remember that I've mentioned that I'm going to do a retrospective on the mini-series, which I watched a couple of nights last weekend, Friday, Saturday, Thursday, Friday, something like that. I've had time to reflect on the series and what I thought of it. And I have to say, for a production from 1983, this still holds up remarkably well. Now, the first comment I want to make particularly is in relation to the DVD in its lovely snapper case. The picture quality on this was absolutely outstanding. Now, I did play this through my 4K player, so obviously it's been upscaled quite a bit. But for a DVD that was released in, I think, 2002, this was great quality. I mean, this is pretty damn close to high definition quality as far as I'm concerned. And I'm not an expert in these things, but the colours popped from the screen. It was vivid, it was clear, it was almost too clear for the effect sequences, in fact, in some places. Sound mix was great. I mean, it's only a bog standard, I think, Dolby surround, but it looked and sounded really good. And I think that really helped me get into the story, because you really felt that you were watching something, although it's over 40 years old, still has a contemporary resonance to it. It's a first contact story, basically, of aliens arriving on Earth, making themselves known to humanity and appearing benign and friendly and hospitable. That, as we discover throughout the miniseries, doesn't prove to be the case. And my first memories of V are of its UK screening, which was in summer 1984. And when I started researching the series, even before I watched it, I was slightly perplexed to discover that it aired in the summer in 1983 in the States, and finally reached the UK, as far as I can tell, the following summer. And I think it was aired on ITV, because in 1984 ITV hadn't signed up to provide any coverage of the Los Angeles Olympic Games. That was all on the BBC. So obviously ITV, with huge gaps in their schedule, purchased filler material, and one of those bits of filler material was the V miniseries. So I still can't quite get my head around the fact that we waited a year to see it in the UK, and I can't remember if we saw the original miniseries and the subsequent Final Battle miniseries, which aired in 1984 in America, whether they all ran together or whether we just had the original. But it's a reminder of the fact that there were times when we didn't get American shows instantly as we do these days. With streaming services and so on, shows debut across the world simultaneously. If they're American shows on network or cable, they find their way over here fairly quickly. There are still sometimes gaps. I'm thinking of some of the Walking Dead spin-offs, which took quite a while to arrive on a streaming service in the UK. But we're so used now to seeing shows simultaneously across the world, it's quite odd to look back at a time when a fairly important, successful series or miniseries like V didn't arrive in the UK until a year after it was broadcast in America. I still find that slightly boggling. I watched the first episode and I found it absolutely enthralling. Really well done. This was made by NBC in America on a budget of, I think, of about 14 million, which will be a lot more in today's money. But it actually looks the business. For a TV movie, it has a real cinematic scale to it, because it's big, it's global, it's got a huge cast, it's got lots of set pieces, it's got lots of action, it's got lots of visual effects. It's a real spectacular, big budget sci-fi TV movie. The story, as you'll probably know, it kicks off with a very well-mounted action sequence in El Salvador, where news reporter Mike Donovan and his partner are filming the events of this sort of civil war that's taking place. All of a sudden, everybody's attention is attracted by the fact that there's this huge flying saucer, this massive disc hanging in the sky, hovering there. And this, of course, recalls these scenes from Independence Day, a decade or so later, which had these scenes of these massive craft that sort of swung into the atmosphere and parted the clouds, and it looked absolutely magnificent. The scenes are slightly more modest here, but still extremely effective, because you've got these massive discs in the sky looming over everything, over 50 major cities across the world. But that is still an imposing and forbidding sort of image, because it is done quite well. And of course there's lots of matte work and there's lots of green screen, and throughout the series some of it works better than others. But certainly in this opening sequence where the ships appear, it's impressive, because these are big monolithic things hanging in the sky silently, and they don't make contact for a while. You do sort of wonder what happened to Earth's radar systems that didn't pick up these 50 massive spaceships passing through space. And I can't remember now if there is a line of dialogue or anything in the script that addresses that. But there is a sense of sort of anticipation and fear and dread, I suppose, from the characters. And we meet a lot of characters. I'm not going to go into depth about many of the characters, because there's so many of them, so many different families and different relationships and different people. And there is this feeling of, what's going to happen? You know, are they going to blast the planet out of the sky? Are they going to devastate the world? Are they just hanging there? But eventually they do make contact, and the sort of shuttlecraft type thing comes down from one of the ships and makes contact. And when the doors open, we as the audience and the assembled crowds watching, we don't know what to expect, what's going to come out. Everybody's quite surprised when they are humanoids. They are all dressed universally in these red jumpsuits with these insignias on them, almost like boiler suits. They wear sort of glasses. They are effectively human, but there's an odd resonance to their voices. Their voices are a slightly different key to human voices. And to be fair, that's something that the series or the mini-series does maintain, that continuity throughout it. So whenever you're talking to a visitor, there's that distortion to the voices. The aliens appear friendly. They're not aggressive. They mean us no harm. They want to work with us, and they want to work with us because they have some problems on their alien planet, and they need some minerals and some chemicals that their planet doesn't have. And the humans and aliens are working together for the greater good. The aliens have promised to share their advanced technology with humankind. All seems well, and the humans and the aliens integrate quite well. There are some quite nice scenes of the aliens in their distinctive boiler suits, interacting with humans and getting friendly with humans, and there's sort of even relationships sort of springing up, because these are effectively alien humans, and we don't know where they've come from, but it all seems to tick over very well until things start to turn a bit strange and a bit suspicious, particularly amongst the scientific community. Scientists around the world suddenly find that they're becoming the objects of increasing media and public hostility. They're finding their activities and their movements are being restricted. Some, particularly those who are really interested in the visitors and want to find out a little bit more about their technology, they disappear. Nobody knows where they've gone. And some start exhibiting strange behaviour and some of their natural human functions, like the movements of their hands. They're suddenly, people who are right-handed are suddenly left-handed. There's something a bit weird going on in this community underneath this surface level friendliness and atmosphere of cooperation between the humans and the visitors. Mike Donovan, the journalist we met at the beginning of the film, he's played by Mark Singer, known to a lot of people from the Beastmaster films that he appeared in, I think, just before the V series arrived. He smuggles his way onto one of the alien shuttlecraft heading back and forth to the alien spaceships, and he gets aboard a mothership and he discovers a little bit of the truth about the aliens, that they're not exactly as they appear. The aliens' skin is in fact synthetic, and beneath their skin are lizard creatures with vicious glowing eyes, sharp pointed tongues, and a distinctly disturbing habit of devouring small rodents. Extremely memorable sequences that are part of sort of the iconography of the series. Is one of the characters, Diana, played with huge malevolence and sort of a sexual sinisterness, by Jane Badler. She opens her mouth and there's a bizarre special effect where her mouth opens up and she drops a huge hamster into her mouth and devours it. And previously we've seen another character eating a rat or a mouse. It's all quite weird. So clearly the aliens aren't exactly what they appear to be. Mike Donovan takes this footage back down to Earth so it can be broadcast so people can find out the truth about the aliens. But before he can do so, the television signal is cut off. The aliens are in control of the media. The situation continues to deteriorate. More and more strange and suspicious things are going on amongst the scientific community. Some humans are taken in by the aliens and become collaborators. And of course, what we ultimately get here is a series that, not incredibly subtly, but quite effectively, is very much an allegory for Nazism and the rise of Hitler Youth and everything that happened in World War II with this huge invading force trying to impose its dominance across the rest of the world. And you get the young people who are taken in by the glamour of the aliens and become sympathizers. You get some who collaborate with the aliens because they admire them, they want to be part of this culture and this technology. But we do get characters who remember that this has happened in the past. There is a Jewish family who factor in part of the narrative, and the grandfather of that family, he remembers World War II, he remembers the Holocaust, he remembers what happened. He can see history repeating itself as these aliens spread their power and influence across the world. Turns out that the aliens have actually come to Earth for our water. Their planet is dying, their water supplies are low, they've effectively come to Earth to strip mine us of our water. And that's where we find ourselves as the series comes to an end. Humans now realise what's going on. A resistance movement is formed, and of course that's working in opposition with some people who actually still believe in the aliens. They want to work with the aliens. They don't quite understand that the aliens really want to wipe out humanity. They want to steal their water, use humans for food, and leave those who are left to die or to become slaves. And it turns out that the aliens are at war with another alien species who are unnamed and unseen in this miniseries. And as the series comes to an end, the visitors are pretty much in control of the Earth. And the resistance movement send a signal out into space calling for help from the aliens' enemies. So that's the gist of the story of V over 40 years on. And I found it a very powerful and immersive piece of television. Obviously, all the Nazi stuff is very front and centre. I mean, it's just, there's no subtext here. This is what this is about. And it's a reminder of something that happened at the time when this was made. World War II was still within the previous 4 decades. It was all still fresh in people's minds. And I think it's very well represented by the character of Abraham Bernstein, who puts across quite well the horror of that time and his fear that this is all happening again under the guise of this invasion by these plausible and very affable looking alien creatures. So all that is very upfront in the story and in the narrative and in the visuals. You know, it's telling you this is a parable of World War II and what can happen. And I found it really interesting and I found it fascinating. I was very impressed by the production design and the scale of it. As I said, it was made on a budget of nearly 14 million. And we see these scenes at the beginning of the shuttlecraft coming down from the spaceship and landing. And it's a full-sized shuttlecraft prop that people move in and out of. And I thought, it's impressive, they built one of those. No, they built about 6, because there are several scenes where you see 2 or 3 of these things lined up. And there are some very big scale, almost Star Wars type sequences, where they go into the mothership for the hangar where these shuttlecraft are berthed, ready to be launched. And there's about 5 or 6 of them there. So they built a lot of these props. And there are a couple of scenes where these things are blown up, when the resistance starts its fight back against the aliens. And there's a couple of battle scenes. It's very well mounted as a spectacle. It looks really good. Yes, the effects are quite dated. There's a lot of matte work. You see the shuttlecraft coming down to Earth, and you can see the matte lines around them as they're matted over the live action of the location. There's a scene in the second film, I think it is, where there's a sort of a dogfight with shuttlecraft has escaped from the mothership, and it's been followed by 2 shuttlecraft with aliens aboard, and they're flying over the sea and across cities. It's very well done, but you can see the matte lines all around it, so it takes you out of the reality of it. But it has that sort of Star Wars feel to it, and I suppose that's what they were going for, because this was within the lifetime of the original Star Wars films. They were trying to create that spectacle for the small screen. But by and large, the effects are pretty good. As I said, the motherships in space look good. There are some very good scenes of the shuttle coming down when it moves from green screen then to the actual shuttle landing. The scale of it, though, the number of people in the cast, the number of extras. There are hundreds of people in these boiler suits. You see hundreds of them on parade coming out of these shuttlecraft. And there were some good battle scenes, fight scenes, laser battles. I mean, I have to say that the aliens are worse shots than the stormtroopers in Star Wars because they never hit anybody. But their guns send out these laser beams of light and sparks, and it just looks really spectacular, and it has a pace to it and energy, and it keeps moving. It's still extremely enjoyable. The series, of course, was created by Kenneth Johnson, a very well-known name from the film and TV industry, and apparently was inspired by Sinclair Lewis's book It Can't Happen Here from 1935. Johnson had actually written an adaptation of this in 1982 called Storm Warning. NBC were given the script for production as a TV miniseries. They felt it was a bit too cerebral for American TV audiences, and the decision was taken to recast and reshape the whole thing to make it something that riffed on Star Wars by recasting the protagonist in the original story as carnivorous extraterrestrials who've come to take over the Earth and wipe out humanity. V debuted in America on May the 1st in 1983 and was a massive hit. The second episode was broadcast the following day, and apparently 40% of the viewing audience on American television were watching this thing. It was a huge hit. So unsurprisingly, a final battle was commissioned for the following summer. I haven't yet seen that, and I think I probably will track it down because I'm interested in seeing where the story goes next. I was mightily impressed with V, and I didn't think I would be, because American science fiction, certainly TV science fiction of the 70s and 80s, had a gloss to it, but it was often quite surface level. There was no depth to it. And as I've mentioned before, a lot of the American TV series of the 70s had this quest format, and they were very often shows that ran out of steam after about 10 or 12 episodes and were cancelled with no resolution. But this is a bigger scale. This was inspired by something from the cinema, so it has a bigger canvas to work on, and it really works as a worldwide story. Although most of the action takes place in America, we do see initial scenes in, as I said, that war zone that they're in, and various places across the USA. It is, of course, with all these things, very USA-centric. We don't see what's happening in England. We don't see what's happening in Europe, or Australia, or China, or Asia, any of that, because it's very American, because that's where the action all takes place. But on that basis, if you set that inevitable prejudice aside, I think it works extremely well as a piece of drama, and I was also impressed by the fact that the cast is extremely diverse. This is 1983. There are quite a lot of black characters and black actors integrated into the script and storyline in a way that's entirely natural, whereas today perhaps things are made a bit more of these things. These are just people who are in the story, and there's no particular reference to their race or their creed or their gender. They're just part of the narrative, and I think a lot of modern storytelling could perhaps learn a lesson from that sort of thing. You know, you don't have to make a huge point of the fact that there are different races on Earth, and they all interact and they all integrate and they're all part of stories. Having been a huge success, and with the sequel, The Final Battle, which was also successful, and a lot of people say The Final Battle is better, so I will be interested to take a look at that to see exactly how good it is. The show eventually then morphed into a weekly series, I think, that debuted in 1985, which died a death fairly quickly. I haven't seen that. I think I probably did see some episodes at the time, but I am aware that it was a much lower budget production. It reused lots of sequences from the mini-series, the effect sequences were reused, and the story started going down rather silly alleys. And I believe that the end of the first mini-series, which, as I said, has this sequence where the Resistance are sending a message out to space looking for help. I don't know if that ever comes to anything. I think that was sidelined and moved away and became more of a pitched battle, sort of a war story between the aliens and the humans. But the series didn't last very long, was cancelled fairly quickly, and I think Kenneth Johnson himself wasn't particularly involved with it. I think even as soon as the second mini-series, there were some disagreements about the direction the stories should take, and he took his name off the scripts. And I think he used a rather silly pseudonym, and I don't know if he was involved in the subsequent series at all. Of course, the series was then rebooted, I think, in the early 2000s, I'm thinking it was, with a cast that included Morena Baccarin, and I don't think that lasted very long. So I think V is at its best in these mini-series, and those are as far as I'm going to take it. I'm going to track down The Final Battle, and I will do a review of that at some point. But for now, I will just say once again that I really enjoyed V. It's of its time. Obviously, it has 80s attitudes and standards and fashions and so on, and there are issues inevitably with the visual effects, but I think as a spectacle it's still spectacular, and that's what you want from something like this. And above all, it's very enjoyable as a piece of storytelling. I felt it was propulsive. I was interested in the numerous characters who filter in and out of the story and drift in and out. It's a very impressive piece of work from a writing perspective, production perspective. The visuals, as I say, largely still effective. And the fact that it tells quite openly a story that's based on one of the most horrific periods in human history and being inspired by a book called Can't Happen Here. It sort of suggests that, yeah, it can happen here. It can happen again and again. And V is an extreme version of the sort of things that we're seeing increasingly across the world. Man's inhumanity to man and the ruthlessness of human ambition and greed. And that's all reflected in V as aliens come to Earth, prepared to wipe out an entire species to keep themselves alive. It's very enjoyable and powerful and sometimes quite thought-provoking for a piece of what could be written off as schlocky American sci-fi. It goes to some dark places. So I'm going to give V, the original miniseries, a good solid 8 out of 10 on this rewatch. As I say, I've not seen this since 1984. And this DVD, incidentally, which I bought off eBay, I had this back in the early days of DVD. Picked this up, put it on my shelf, never watched it, clearly disposed of it at some point. But it was very interesting to become reacquainted with it. And I'm looking forward to watching The Last Battle in the next few weeks when I get hold of a copy. Right, that's me done. Thank you for watching this video. Hope you've enjoyed it. Let me know what your memories are of V, the miniseries. Leave a comment down below. Always nice to hear from you. And as I said at the beginning, like and subscribe to the channel. So just press that subscribe button, press the like button, leave a comment down below. If you want one of these t-shirts, incidentally, you can keep taking the stuff. I'll leave details for you to get hold of one of those in the description down below. Right, I'm out of here. I'll see you soon. Until I do, keep taking the stuff.